Well, I understand that I am the obstacle between everyone in this room and the cocktail hour, so I will endeavor to be brief. And as I understand, we have about 15 minutes for this discussion, which for those of you who know anything about investment bankers and their ability to talk about the markets and their various war stories, that's near impossibility. The wonderful thing that is afoot is that the whole wireless infrastructure sector is one of the hottest sectors and probably has experienced one of the longest constructive backdrops really since the emergence of its dissection from larger constructs. And it really is a sector that's benefiting from a number of confluencing factors. Obviously, the overall wireless subscriber growth is a major contributor. The proliferation of bandwidth consumptive devices of every variety and new overlays of capacity consumption being introduced through a variety of formats, including the Internet of Things, which is just beginning to take hold. All of this is further compounded by the sophistication and the applications growth that require wireless infrastructure as well, and the pervasiveness of data distribution over these networks. All of that is to say that the sector overall benefits dramatically from a macro backdrop that is quite favorable. These growth trends are being seen for the particular wireless infrastructure players in a variety of ways. As the service providers have continued to graduate their capacity requirements, it's actually made it quite lucrative for either the macro tower providers or the particular niche players that are feeding into that ecosystem as well, to benefit from the generational upgrades that are taking part across that ecosystem. As we're currently seeing the migration to LTE, we're also beginning to see the definitions of the fifth generation, which is still in many respects being defined and interpreted by various folks. But I think one thing that's fair to say is that it will translate to incremental opportunity for players across the wireless infrastructure sphere. And I think these macro variables have contributed to a variety of additional factors, which is that some of the main players in the space have looked for ways in which to broaden their participation across the ecosystem. You've seen a lot of M&A activity, consolidation in the space. This very effective cost of capital backdrop has also made it possible for some of the major players in the ecosystem to pay what have been, secular records in terms of valuations for some of these asset classes. And at the moment, there seems no likely disruption to that, barring a major shift in that underlying cost of capital. As a major macro commentary, I'd also say that the overall availability of capital, and this is a macro comment and to maybe Alyssa's remarks earlier, it's hard to make macro comments that apply to every company, and I think it's fair to say that the overall backdrop is extremely constructive, but how you finance or how you construct the right capital structure or the right strategic solutions for every company is really quite distinct and unique and impossible to cover in a 15-minute format, even in broad swaths. But we would welcome those dialogues for any of you who are thinking about either strategic and or capital markets type of opportunities. There's also a backdrop now where there are so many distinct subsegments of every one of these categories. So in the old days, there were broad stroke comments like private equity. Within the confines of private equity today, you have so many different varieties of participation. You have sovereign funds that have become increasingly direct investors. You see both domestic and international pension funds that are now in the direct investment activity as well, particularly in these infrastructure-centric asset classes. In addition to the traditional private equity conglomerates, if you will, there's also infrastructure subsegments within the confines of some of these organizations, and then new offspring, in many cases, of specific and dedicated infrastructure-centric funds as well. And then last but not least, you have every kind of institutional grade family office and or high net worth aggregation tools as well. I won't spend a lot of the similar kind of idiosyncrasy, if you will, on each category of the capital structure, but the same applies to mezzanine credit, second lien capital, term loan A, and the proliferation of every variety of credit fund. This is a long-winded way of saying that it's a very, very active ecosystem, and depending upon where you are in that hierarchy in your company's evolution and or your maturity in terms of the cash flow streams that you have as part of your picture. But it's also a very high-class circumstance where you have a lot of competing interests which are driving the ecosystem to be as refined as it is, which is leading to the record valuations that you see in some of the transactions that you read about. This is also an arena that is seeing a variety of confluencing factors. So you heard probably earlier today about folks that are deploying a great deal of infrastructure at the edge in the data center format. I think you'll see more of that, and probably closer and closer to the wireless consumer, with caching taking place with greater efficacy, leveraging, I think, both the capacity over wireless and wireline complementary infrastructure. And you're also seeing some of the wireless infrastructure players increasingly, whether it's through DAS-centric initiatives, and in some cases, more specifically also augmenting their wireless infrastructure with a real estate-centric model that applies the wireline component as well. To what degree that proliferates among many other players, I think Crown certainly has made a real foray into that sphere. Others are certainly studying it very carefully, and potentially you're going to see more crossing over between those two ecosystems as well. In the interest of the short time we're here, I think it's fair to say, or safe to say, that the proverbial interesting times are upon us here in the wireless infrastructure space. And to the degree that you all have either strategic and or financial objectives, that we would welcome the dialogues and the opportunity to actually explore some of those thoughts, because it is a very nuanced arena with a lot of optionality and a lot of flexibility. And I think it's one of those times where aligning the right opportunity and structuring and identifying the right solution is uniquely available. And hopefully it remains constructive for some time to come. I'll keep it very short and turn it to the floor if there's any specific questions, or otherwise we could speak informally afterwards. We could leave it there. Thank you all for staying.